if you're on a plan 2 loan, student loan, your interest rate is set by how much you earn. So if you earn £28,470 or less, the interest rate charged on your loan is 3.2%. If you earn between £28,471 and £51,245, your interest rate is 3.2% plus up to 3%, whatever that means. If you earn £51,245 or more, your loan rate doubles to 6.2%. Generally speaking, though, the more reliable a borrower is, i.e. the more creditworthy they are, the better the rate of interest they get offered by a bank.
Yep.
But in our government's infinite wisdom, it is doubling the loan interest on higher earners. Now, it literally smacks aspiration in the face. They are saying, if you earn more money, we will charge you more interest. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mouthy Money podcast. My name is Edmund Greaves, and I'm the editor of Mouthy Money, and I'm joined, as ever, by my good co-host, Chris Chu. Chris, hello, how are you doing?
Hey, Ed, how's it going?
Yes, good, thank you. Now, there's a slight possibility that this might be my last episode of the year, but perhaps not yours, because I am due for imminent paternity leave, my second paternity leave, which is quite exciting.
Congratulations. I know I've said it to you already, but not on air, so congratulations.
Thank you very much, Chris. And I think we're going to do another one of our kind of you and me on a slightly more philosophical note type discussion, but I think there's practicalities in there as well. And really what we're discussing today is the era of aspiration over? Are we seeing an end to the ability for people to aspire to things? Now, what do we mean by aspiration? I guess that's going from point A to point B, and point A is could be £0 and point B could be a millionaire, or it could be going from not being a homeowner to being a homeowner. Aspiration comes in lots of different forms, doesn't it, Chris?
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me about this idea, and why are we talking about it at this point in time as well?
Yeah, it's something that's quite close to my heart in terms of the importance, and it's tied up with money, right? So we're talking all about building wealth on this pod, and all about trying to help people to build it, to protect it, to spend it, all those kind of good things. And the reason that we're doing that is because we have some end goal in sight, right? And you need to be energized and activated towards achieving that end goal, whatever that may be. Now, if I think about myself, my journey towards it, look, I grew up in a slightly low income household, decided that I was going to go to university, invest in my future, hopefully one day own a home, raise a family, and, be able to live a more comfortable, financially secure lifestyle. So broadly speaking, so far so good on the aspirations that I had. The next ones for me are, I'd quite like to be able to retire. I'd quite like to be able to support my children when it comes to them moving onto the property ladder and when they decide to make decisions around education. So I'm sort of like very Blairite, I suppose, in terms of my experience of this, Ed, which is, equality of opportunity. If you work hard, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, make all the good choices, sensible with things, invest in yourself, then you'll be able to achieve what you want to achieve. And if I look at the situation now with what's happened post-budget and some of the stories that I've seen in, publications like The Times and other UK media about the impact on that of people who are coming through, I do feel like aspiration is being clobbered somewhat. And one great example of this that I can think about is something that came up in our post-budget pod, which you touched on, but this idea that graduates essentially are being hit with, I suppose you call it a stealth tax. So they've frozen the loan repayment and income tax thresholds, and that will hit lower earning graduates the hardest. And in an article by Mary Downer in The Times over the weekend, they calculated that graduates will be £4,500 worse off from the budget. We talked about it before in terms of your income is your biggest asset when it comes to being a launch pad for you to be able to achieve your financial aims. And actually, one of the major ways that I was able to rocket boost that was by getting a degree. And there was a little bit of debt, but it wasn't insurmountable. And now I look at it and think, what choices, if I was 18 again, what choices do you have when it comes to sort of aiming towards what you want to achieve? House prices are becoming more affordable than ever. There was an article on that as well, also in The Times over the weekend, where mortgage terms for new homeowners are getting longer while renters struggle to save for deposits. and first-time buyers are older and more indebted than ever last year. So that was data from the English Housing Survey sort of drew those conclusions. So one of the major aspirations, I'd say, that's pretty standard for a lot of people about owning your own home is becoming harder and harder and harder. Getting off on a sound financial footing after you graduate and hopefully increase your earnings is getting harder and harder and harder. And then you look at the jobs market for graduates and people who are coming through, and actually there's so much uncertainty about whether or not they're going to be able to have a career that's going to work out for them. So in the short term, it's looking kind of grim if you're sort of a young person and trying to sort of build some wealth for yourself, I think. And that's bound to impact what you think is possible with your money. And aspiration is the engine that gets us all activated and engaged with our money, right? It's what helps get us off our bum and gets people listening to this and helps us to think about what we want to achieve in the future. And actually just looking through that lens, and there's other lenses as well in terms about when people can retire and things like that, but looking through that kind of graduate lens, if people are losing faith in that, if they're just being saddled with huge debts at the outset that they can't really clear fast enough to then achieve the other things they want in their life, then it's going to demand a huge rethink, particularly with changes, like I say, coming through like AI impacting what's going on in terms of the workforce and all the rest of it. So I think we're at a strange point when it comes to aspiration. Hence why I wanted to talk about it today, Ed, because if you can't see a way to achieve what you want to achieve, that can leave you feeling quite nihilistic or disengaged or not wanting to. Or it could send you the other way and make you work harder to try and achieve that in the first place. But looking out there, it's tough. So yeah, I think in short, we are in a bit of a point where aspiration is in a bit of a crisis here, Ed. And so I thought it might be worth talking about, particularly through the lens of wealth and what people want to achieve.
Yeah, look, I think the issue here around students is a very interesting one, and it's an interesting way of framing the problem, because that's kind of where the aspirational sort of the technicalities of aspiration start, because you've had your school education, but the next step is you have to decide, okay, well, what do I want to do as a young adult? Do I go and study, get a degree, and hopefully that will lead me to getting a better salary, etc.? I think, to be candid, I think the changes and some of the stuff that came through around students and graduates, I should say, in the budget were shocking, frankly. So if we want to think about aspiration, right, as you mentioned, the threshold is being held back. That's going to raise 7 billion odd quid by the end of the Parliament. It's a huge tax hike on graduates, particularly at the lower end. But there's other really, really, properly unhinged stuff being done at the moment that I think is a huge problem. So to paint the picture for you, if you're on a Plan 2 loan, student loan, your interest rate is set by how much you earn. So if you earn £28,470 or less, the interest rate charged on your loan is 3.2%. If you earn between £28,471 and £51,245, your interest rate is 3.2% plus up to 3%. Whatever that means. If you earn £51,245 or more, your loan rate doubles to 6.2%. Now, Chris, I'm not sure how familiar you are with how personal loans work. Generally speaking, though, the more reliable a borrower is, i.e. the more creditworthy they are, the better the rate of interest they get offered by a bank.
Yep.
But in our government's infinite wisdom, it is doubling the loan interest on higher earners. Now, it's literally smacks aspiration in the face. They are saying, if you earn more money, we will charge you more interest. So we do not, and it's not to say we don't want you to earn more money, it's to say that if you earn more, we will take more of it away by increasing the amount of interest, making it more difficult for you to pay back your loan. So Is the era of aspiration over? No, I actually don't think it is. Is the era of aspiration over for the system that we have created through higher education? Yes, 100%, because we are saddling a generation with debts they will never ever pay off, creating a fixed fiscal time bomb for about 30 years from now when lots of these loans start getting written down. We put and this is not even to get started on the whole trope of we put so many people through higher education and then loads of them go and be baristas and pull pints and that kind of thing and don't earn a proper money and never pay any of it off and all that sort of thing. Where is their aspiration going? Because they're not earning better than minimum wage anyway, which has been hiked and is now close to that threshold where people have to start paying back their loans anyway, and will probably get continually hiked to the point where there's no point essentially earning more than minimum wage. And I'm not sure if we've talked about it before, but there's this idea of the flattening of incomes, where everybody just earns minimum wage because what's the point of earning anything else? And that is the real death of aspiration here. For me, I think it would be, you could start getting into dangerous political territory by talking about whether the minimum wage is set at the right level and that sort of thing. That's very, very murky ground to be getting onto. I think a better argument would be that young people, graduates, have probably not been paid enough for quite a long time. And those wages have been pinned down, like they've been pinned down for almost everybody because of bad productivity for more than a decade. So I think the structural issues in our economy are massive, and that is what is killing aspiration. Because why work hard if you're not going to be better off for it? What's the point, right? And
yeah.
we have this, we've talked about this in recent podcasts, is, well, should we bring in a wealth tax and tax more of the wealthy? Well, that's fine up to a point, but my counter argument to that would be we need to unlock people at the bottom of the system to help them get richer rather than just taking more from the rich. We need to help them become more productive, build their wealth, and do that in a meaningful way that doesn't then get robbed by things like, oh, well, why don't we get rid of the salary sacrifice on pensions and just clamp down on that as a route to saving more for retirement, etc. Sorry, you're getting quite jaded opinions here out of me today.
No, listen, I think it's worth talking about. Sorry, go on. You want to carry on?
No, look, I think there is room for aspiration, but I think that we need to be realistic as the big getting a degree. When I got a degree, and I'm sure, Chris, you're a similar age to me, it felt like a cost, but not one that was so insurmountable that I would never be able to get over it. And look, I fully agree the fact that my degree has helped me earn more money than I might have done if I had not had one in a specific way. I went to a red brick Russell Group, whatever it's called, university. I paid 3,000 odd pounds a year for my tuition fees, and I recently finished paying them off, and that is great. That feels lovely, and that's 15 years into my career, having left university, or not even 15 years, having left university in 2012, I've now paid off my student loans. That feels like an acceptable level of risk for me to have had to take on in order to build a better career. But people who came through on the higher loan levels, they have no hope of ever doing it. And the problem here is that the government's lying about the student loan system. It's not a student loan. It's a graduate tax. It's a 9% tax on your income for 30 years after you leave university. I recently had some discussions about this on X, formerly known as Twitter, about this. And the counterpoint that somebody made to me about that was, well, it's not a graduate tax because actually the wealthiest just get out of paying it. But that's the same as every tax. The wealthy just find a way to not pay it. But they still do have to pay it. They still pay the student tuition fees. They just don't pay the disgusting interest rates that the government puts on, the wrong-headed interest rates that I've already mentioned. And again, they pay the absolute minimum because they're allowed to pay it up front in a lump sum. It's just a form of avoidance of a tax. That's all it comes down to. So the rich stay rich, and the aspirational state are unable to get a leg up because they are literally financially oppressed by the government that creates the system for them that is all set against them. Sorry, I'll stop now.
No, that's good. Listen, I would agree we've got a broken tax system and people at the top get away with not paying their fair share. We talked about that previously at length. Look at the previous pod around, what is wealth. We'll put a link maybe. I think this isn't just a graduate thing, though. There's been this thing in recent years where, £100,000 has become this sort of precipice earning figure where it's like if you go over that, then it's just not worth your time. This all is sort of practical examples of where Britain has not grown for 20 odd years. We've talked about that before at length as well. The economy has been sort of stuck in first gear, reverse, neutral, whatever you want to call it, and has not been able to grow enough. And that's come home to roost in these sort of weird quirks that have popped up where what you're talking about there is the government's robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's shifting money around when really, and this is probably more my sort of centrist position on this kind of thing, but we do need growth, right? And you can see that in the budget with the government trying to encourage us to invest more. But if you're investing, you have to invest with an idea of something you want to achieve in the future. Otherwise, why take the risk, right? You need to have an idea of, and that's come out with all the work I've done with my clients in the investing space in the past, which is, you need to speak to what it is that people want to achieve with their money, what their ambitions are, own a home, travel the world, save for a comfortable retirement, put my kids through university, which incidentally is becoming more expensive as we touched on. And if your biggest earning vehicle is your income and you reach a certain point, you're like, there's just no point in doing this. What tends to come through then is apathy and people losing that sense of like, well, what's the point? And then I might as well just, retain what I've got. And that's why you've got all this money sitting around doing nothing, because people haven't been energized to think that they can achieve what they want in the future. Now, I'm sitting from a relatively privileged position in that I've achieved some of the things that I want to achieve, still very much in the midst of like paying off a mortgage and saving for retirement, and all of that isn't certain by any stretch. And I saw some news coverage over the weekend of people saying that they're worried they'll never be able to retire, which is something that is a concern as well. That's an aspiration, wanting to retire in time. But if we don't fix this growth problem, then there is going to be no kind of ability for us to have any aspiration. And I don't see an aspiration from the top. I don't see an aspiration from policymakers, government, other people about where we want to be. What I see is rehashing of the same old stuff and going around in kind of circles. And this is where I get maybe a bit more positive about it, because there's huge amounts of uncertainty. I've touched on economic issues that are happening globally. We've had, flatlining growth. We've got all sorts of instability in certain regions. We've got AI threatening the white collar worker, all these other things that are kind of maybe impacting the way that people are going to see things in the future. When it comes to investing, particularly where there's uncertainty, there's opportunity. That's the other way to look at this. So I wouldn't say that people should kind of lose their faith in their investment portfolio. And, it's all about your own attitude to risk. And this is not investment advice at all, but it's more just this idea of like, well, actually, if you're switched on and you're watching this and you're thinking about what you want to achieve, you might need to be more engaged with this stuff as we go through this, because ultimately all the things that are supposed to help you and elevate you, all the kind of social contracts that you've touched on before that help people to achieve their aspirations in this society, aren't functioning the way they should be. And so you're going to have to do it to a large part by yourself. And going back to those younger people, those people who are going through doing what the equivalent of A levels now and getting into university and all that kind of stuff, they're going to have to start earlier and earlier and earlier to keep up with this rising rate of house prices, cost of education, retirement in the future, paying for your own care. What's the NHS going to look like in the future? So without meaning to scaremonger, there's practical things you can do with that. And that is start early, and all the stuff that the guests we have who come in here say, start early and think about your portfolio from day one. And there needs to be more education around that, because we are going to have to rely on ourselves.
Yeah, look, the investing thing is interesting. I think that having now been convinced that their heart is sort of in the right place on the encouraging investing noises that they've been making. I mean, there was an interesting stat put out by the FCA the other day on how many people tend to, with £10,000 or more to invest, how many of them are holding their assets in cash, and the figure was 61%.
So is that fear, Ed, or is that lack of aspiration? What do we think?
Yeah, so look, this is right. So at first sight, you might look at it and they go, God, that's terrible. People should be investing all that money. But I have, between my wife and I, we have around, that sort of level of cash at the moment that's not invested. And you think, well, you're the editor of a personal finance publication. Why on earth are you doing that? You're supposed to be investing. And I know full well that I'm supposed to be investing it. And I do invest through my pension currently. The reason why that money is not invested is two reasons. The first is I'm currently getting an interest rate on that cash that is beating inflation, because interest rates are higher than they were for 10 years previously. So actually that mindset of, it's got to be invested, it's not quite that clear anymore if you're able to keep that cash ahead of inflation, 4.5% or whatever earning interest, which is what my current one is in. But it's more than that, right? How much economic uncertainty have we lived through, Chris? From
quite a few incidents.
From the financial crisis, and I came of age around the financial crisis. So we had the financial crisis, we had the coalition government with the austerity, or supposed austerity. We had Brexit, we had COVID, we've had tariff wars, we've had inflation, we've had all of this stuff. It doesn't get easier, right? So it doesn't surprise me that people are holding a lot of cash, because everybody's worried that they might lose their job. We tell people you need to hold 3 to 6 months worth of income in cash in order to have a rainy day fund in case you lose your job, blah, 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 etc. So it's no wonder people are holding on to lots of cash and waiting for that worst case scenario to come through. The question that I think we should be asking is, why are we all waiting for that worst case scenario? What is fundamentally wrong here that is leading us down that path of we're all too terrified to invest? Not because investing is scary, but because I'm worried I might not have a job in 3 months' time. And what's the point of investing if I'm unemployed? I think that's the scary thing. And that's what it's like, why be aspirational when you're not worried, you're worried that you're not going to have a job? I think that's a big fundamental issue and that we have, and things aren't getting better in that sense. We need somebody to say the economy is going to be fixed and we're going to grow. And I know that the current government are try and do that, but I just don't really believe it. I'm sorry.
Well, they don't know that themselves, do they, Ed? You know, I hear you on that, but I think I'm thinking in short, mid, and long term here, right? So you need that rainy day fund. I have one, and you know the way that I was raised was I need one. You just priority number one. Then you have the kind of midterm stuff where I would like to make some changes to the house so we can invest some of that money, and then long term. And the long term I'm more comfortable with, which is whatever happens, we go through economic cycles. You've pointed to a lot of issues there, Ed. We have lived through a lot. Maybe if I'm putting a positive hat on, that means that something's going to turn for us. Let's be positive for a minute, and actually we might see, you know, a period of growth coming up with all the tech changes that are in the air, and when all that settles down, we might find this economy's motoring on where we want it to. In which case you want to be positioned to be able to take advantage of that. And so it can be too easy to get too nihilistic and too defeatist about this. But if you can't see through the clouds to what your end destination is, your aspiration, what you've just said is more likely to happen, which is people start making not bad decisions with their money, but suboptimal decisions with their money because there isn't the motivation to try and push on with it. And it's too often framed in this idea of fear. And I think there is fear. Obviously, there's uncertainty, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But also, if you really believe in your vision, then you'll push on through that. I don't think we believe in any of the visions that we're being sold from the powers that be, and understandably so, because everybody's failed in all of those examples that you gave to drive us forward as we need to. Which means, again, I'll go back to it, you need to rely on yourself. And actually, we need to rely on ourselves as a community to think about where these opportunities might be. And the more we talk about it, the more we might be able to spot them and the more people might be able to take advantage of it. And that's not a shameless plug. That's a genuine held belief, which is we need to talk more about money. We need to talk more about wealth building. We need to talk more about how the economic situation impacts us all and up our education. And I, for one, I'm going to make sure my kids know about that stuff too, because it's going to set them up to just break even. Whereas before it might have been an opportunity to make sure that they're far wealthier. So I hear what you're saying. I definitely, you know, and I agree to a point, but I think there's this sort of wider piece around we need to get through the storm clouds. But in the meantime, you can prepare what you've got, and it doesn't all have to be, all your chips have to be on disaster. It's like, well, let's think about where we can put stuff on the sort of off chance that the cloud breaks and all of a sudden there's a sunny upland there and we're not rushing to try and take advantage of it. So, you know, I understand it's been pessimistic for a while for a lot of people, but you can't lose focus on it. And, you got to keep kind of rolling and hope that the worm turns.
Yeah, I mean, to distort the analogy somewhat, it's like living in Devon where you get storm clouds roll in, you get a bit of sunshine, and then just a bigger storm cloud comes in afterwards.
So the weather where you live is impacting your investing decisions too much, Ed. That's it. You can't rely on the weather.
It's impacting my mindset. What's that book called? Prisoners of Geography. It's just constant rain. It just rains on my parade every day. No, look, I hate being pessimistic about this kind
of stuff. It's usually my job, Ed, to be.
No, I think aspiration is really important, but it's hard not to look at the way things function in our economy and think, well, somebody's got their fingers on the scale somewhere. An ever decreasing sort of group of people, let's call them taxpayers, are paying for an ever expanding set of things that are fundamentally becoming almost untenable. And this is not even like a new argument to be having, because we even knew it before the current incumbent government got into power, which was okay, well, there's a number of things you can do to fix the way our economy works. You can tax more, you can cut spending, you can borrow more. Those will come with their own pitfalls. The government made its assumption was, well, we can't really do any of that. Well, at least this is what they said at the time, was we can't really do any of that. So we're going to grow the economy, because the people always use that pie analogy, don't they? It's like you can divvy up the pie in ever smaller pieces, or you can grow the pie so that everybody has a bit more pie. And so you have to do that. That's the best way to do it. But the thing is growth isn't just easy. You can't just make it happen and will it into existence. You have to do things that encourage that. And again, I think it's, if we want aspiration, if we want people to get up in the morning and think, yeah, let's go get it. I've really got an opportunity here to make myself better off. Then you have to unlock those things that help people do that. And I just don't think we're there yet in a practical level. And I think if people want to draw hope from it, it's that well, if you're able to do something like save for the future and invest and plan for that, then you're already doing pretty well. That's already good news. If you're able to put 50 quid away, 100 quid away, 300 quid away a month for something earmarked for your future happiness, then you're already doing a good job. And that's already a good thing. So you should actually pat yourself on the back for that and say, no, I'm actually doing all right now. So what next? How can I make it better? And for those people who aren't in that position, then you got to work harder. And I think I posted it on one of our social channels a little while back on Mouthy Money when a lot of people were having discussions about not paying their council tax, which I found a little bit unsettling. And my response to it was pay your taxes and vote for better ones. And that's all I have to say about it, really.
Yeah, but if you want to encourage growth, Ed, and your summation there is correct, but I go back to the examples we used previously. Make it worth people's while to increase their skill set, instead of the sense that trying to improve myself through a degree, for example, is going to make me financially, is going to saddle me with huge amounts of debt. It's going to slow me down. So what's the point? If you need that, and I'm not saying degree is the only way to do that. You need to make, what's the word I'm looking for? God, I've forgotten.
Well, look, I think, look,
the other forms of training for other people, and the £100,000 thing as well. It's like, if you want this to grow and you want people to spend in the economy, don't make it not worthwhile for people to reach a certain income threshold and then go, that's it, that's me, there's no point, while everything kind of increases around us. You have to kind of encourage that to grow with that in order for that to work, so people have greater spending power to put back into the economy. So all those apprenticeships, all that kind of stuff, degrees, all betterment needs to be encouraged rather than punished, which is where it feels like it's going on at the moment.
I think this brings us kind of full circle to where we started in that thing about, well, what kind of skills do you want to take on, and what are going to be the most valuable for your life? And I think we've spent a lot of cultural, social and economic capital turning things like higher education into a massive system, into a massive industry, when actually, as you mentioned there, stuff like apprenticeships, and I've seen data around this, it's quite hard to find hard facts on it though, that apprentices come out with skills and no debt from this. And the irony of apprenticeships is graduates often learn lots of soft skills that might be useful in a financial services company, but there's loads and loads of them out there now. We're producing lots of them, so it's very uncompetitive. It's very competitive. Whereas, and those kind of skills are the ones being eaten alive by AI now. So if you're going to go do an apprenticeship and become a plumber, I'll tell you something, Chris, we're not going to AI plumbing anytime soon, because it involves physical labor. So actually the ones who are laughing all the way to the bank are the ones who've got those real world skills that AI is never going to replicate. Maybe that's the answer. Go and doing real jobs. I'm sounding like blue labor now. We're going to go support, the
I knew it would happen.
Hard-working blue collar types, I don't know what you call them, but do you know what I mean? I do. And listen, Jeffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI, said that was his advice after he made his money from Google, millions from Google and Scarpa. He then went on various podcasts saying AI is coming for your job, and I'm telling my son to become a plumber, or I would tell my son to become a plumber. Too late for me. I could try and retrain on all of that. My option is, look, stay focused on what the things that I want to achieve. They're reasonable. They're not crazy. Keep doing the right things day to day. Stay disciplined. Good decisions compound as well as sort of bad decisions. It's worth remembering that. We've literally touched on compound interest as a concept here. Have that sort of short, medium, long-term thing. And then more conversations you can have about this sort of thing, the better. And the more you can be involved in communities like this, the better. And there are loads of communities out there, not just ours, where you can just make sure that, you're listening to the right voices, or you're getting ideas, and you're kind of thinking about that stuff. And don't lose faith in it, because the worm has to turn at some point. And even if it doesn't, if you make all these right kind of choices, you're going to be better off in your worst Devon storm. So it's I wouldn't say necessarily it's win-win, but it's wise. It's just wise to do it either way. Do it that way. And keep kind of going. That's all I can say. And hopefully some of these crazy things that we've seen in terms of what's come out of the budget and the impact that it's had on stuff, it feels like robbing Peter to pay Paul don't necessarily end up hamstringing us too much, and we can start motoring towards something a little more akin to positive growth in the mid part of this century, because as you say, it's been a slow start. Yeah. Well, I think that about wraps us up. I'm trying to find positivity there. I appreciate that, Chris. Thank you. As ever, we try and see the light and through the dark on this podcast. Do let us know your thoughts in the comments. We're kind of ongoing conversation about how the world is changing and this sort of thing. So do let us know. That's about it. Thank you again, Chris, for joining me.
My pleasure.
And thank you everybody for listening in. We'll see you all again, hopefully very soon. So with that, thank you and goodbye.